seminar this quarter, thinking about technology, design, and ethics. And what is ethics in our everyday personal and professional lives? So welcome. Here's our agenda for tonight. Like I said, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and UX Night School. I'll share the new curriculum and talk a little bit about the new thing we're doing, which is a program certificate, which we now have 3 classes. And if you take all 3 of them, you're eligible to get a certificate and I think take a more active role in scoping what your next steps are. So I'm really excited about that. Next, I want to do a course preview and talk about what ethics is and why it's important for professionals in design and tech to have a healthy idea about ethics.
Sounds great. Yep.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
All right. So I'm Amelia Abreu. I live in Portland, Oregon. And by day, I work as a user experience designer in the healthcare field. And I've been at this for about 10 years. I've had a sort of shoots and ladders career path. My first career was as a librarian. And then I got really interested in human-computer interaction. So I went back to pursue a PhD. And assumed that I was going to be a professor and do research. And, but, life happened and I found myself making extra money by freelancing as a designer and a researcher and realizing that that's what I like doing. And then 6 years ago, I moved with my family to Portland. I have a 7-year-old daughter who thinks of Oregon as her home. And I've been freelancing and getting to know folks in the Portland design community. And I found that it was really that folks are really curious about what I did, but they didn't have a lot of places to learn it. And having taught in the classroom at University of Washington and being the daughter of 2 classroom teachers, I realized I really miss teaching. So UX Night School was born in 2016. And I always like to say that we're based in Portland and on the internet. We'll talk a lot about how designers and technologists can engage with their community. This is now the 8th cohort of UX Night School, which is amazing. This is something that I hadn't really foreseen. I taught these initial workshops, not really thinking about what the next few years would look like. And I really do, but these workshops have been really enriched and influenced by the 7 groups of folks who started before you. And I always think of folks who participate in these workshops as really active participants who are co-designing their own learning. And we've had some really awesome students. We've had students come from all walks of life and all backgrounds. We've had designers, we've had account managers, we've had customer service folks. We've had folks from many different industries across finance and insurance and even medicine. And I find that it's really, that's the best thing that folks say, the thing that folks say that they like the most when they do their evaluations is meeting other people. And even though this group is going to be online this quarter, I really hope that you all can engage with each other and help build relationships and have some peer support. So I'm going to make the assumption that we are all here because we want to learn more about user experience, or at least more about this intersection of design and technology. And I think we all want methods to do it and to use it and to know what we are talking about and be confident. But I think on a deeper level, we all are people who like to solve problems. We want to make things better. We want to get paid for it. And this is something that you need critical skills for. You need some critical toolkits for. And we hope to empower you to do this, to move forward and to solve these wicked problems. So when I go to a cocktail party, people will say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I'll say, "Oh, well, I'm a user experience designer." Or I'll say, "I'm a design researcher." And they'll say, "Oh, what's that?" And I say, "Well, I work with teams to improve the usability of their products, to improve the design, and to understand their users better." And then oftentimes folks will talk to me about a website that they have to use or a tool that they use that they don't like. And they'll talk to me about like, "Oh yes," they'll give me their sort of usability laundry list about how they're really going to stop. They're not going to use TurboTax next year, even though they've used TurboTax for the last 6 years on their taxes, or they're going to complain about paying their electric bill. And I get it, but I think we're at a point in our very recent history where part of what I do and part of what we do as UX designers and usability professionals is very visible, but a lot of it is very invisible. And I think this is something that lends itself to lifelong learning. One of the things that I really love about my career in UX is that I am constantly learning, and that it is a job that allows me to have a wide breadth of experience. I have gone on ride-alongs with long-haul truckers in the name of work. I've been in operating rooms. I've hung out at bars doing research on bartenders. And I love having a job that affords me the ability to experience all sorts of different environments. The next point I want to make is that UX is a rapidly growing field. And I started UX Night School with the goal to help folks from all different backgrounds enter and engage with the field. Because I found that I wanted more diversity in my colleagues. And this I find to be a very helpful graphic in illustrating just how big this growth has been and is predicted to be. In the year in the mid 90s, there were less than 10,000 people who worked in the field of user experience. But by 2020, there'll be about 1 million people who work in the user experience field. And that number is predicted, and this is a report from Nielsen Norman Group, to grow even more. And this means that folks from all backgrounds will be coming into the profession, and it's a very exciting time. So last, before we move on, and just so nobody is, just so no one is confused, one thing that people ask me is, well, how do you define user experience? So I really like this definition, also by Don Norman. We will read and hear from many other experts, but somehow this sort of founding father of user experience is someone I quote a lot in this presentation. Is how we define user experience. So our first requirement is to meet the needs of the customer, and that's pretty straightforward. But I like how this definition sort of unfolds. We talk about simplicity and elegance, products that are a joy to use, merging of services. One topic that I really love to talk about is service design, and how engineering, marketing, design, they all sort of come together in the user experience. The last point they make is that the definition of usability is an attribute of user experience, but it's not the entirety of it. A graphic that gets tossed around a lot. And I think it's very illustrative in that if we go back to affordances, oftentimes the tools that are designed for us are not the ones that give us the outcome that we want. And so this is an especially important thing to think about when we think about ethics, when we think about how we go about our everyday work and how we do it to achieve the most good. Overall, I think that learning about UX means learning to think critically about design and technology and human needs as a sort of baseline for your professional responsibility. Humans have been making tools better for thousands of years. And here you'll see some iron swords from the Shou dynasty, which date back to 400 BCE. And if you'll look here, you'll see that there are grips on these swords. And these are the first of their kind. The handle of a sword is an interface. And this is an attempt at making a better interface, is to think about how we approach problems. And I'll explain this a bit. So UX is a type of applied social science. And by that, I mean, we will be reading many great philosophers in the seminar, but not this one, who's one of my favorites, Alan Iverson. User experience design, software development, these are all practices. It's a way of applying what has been developed on a theoretical basis. And so here you see this, you can see this matrix. On one end is theoretical, based on what we already know. And on the other end is empirical, meaning we're going to measure this. And then on the other side, we see on the x-axis, we see on one end basic science, so lab science, and on the right we see practice, which is applied. So this is we can think about this in terms of on one end we have theoretical biochemistry. On the other end we have a nurse checking your vitals. Similarly, when I have a sister who is a theoretical physicist, and I would put her work way at the top of this on this theoretical side. But when I am doing a usability test for a project, it's very much on the empirical end of this. This comes from a journal article by Faste and Faste, who are two design theorists who have the same last name. I don't know what the story is behind that, but they're the folks who propose this matrix, and they plot design research as leaning heavily into the bottom right-hand corner, whereas they posit engineering leans heavily into the top left-hand corner. I laid another circle on this, which is ethics. This is something that is highly theoretical, but it's also highly practical. As we read about different ethical frameworks, one constant that we will find is a focus on the present, a focus on practice. This idea that research is at the heart of any design effort, but that design is at the center of a larger mode of practice.